We are back. Guess who's back?
Righty tighty.
Back again.
Back again. Guess who's back? Guess who's back?
Uh, 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 uh. All right. Thank you everybody for hopping on with us tonight. Got a couple things, a couple big things actually. We got
Some fun
China
topic.
making some moves. Very curious to hear what you all think about it. But if you have been checking out the stream or our Discord rather, Dylan's been posting some pretty crazy stuff going on in China. So
Yeah, China's
definitely want
going
to
ham.
hear your thoughts on that as we progress here tonight. But fixing the camera really quick. Apparently.
Yeah, but again, we are in week, I think it's number, was this 5 or 6? Week
Six, I
five or
think.
six of Real Talk. We give Jake all the credit for that, for naming it Real Talk, but
Yeah, beautiful name.
STG Real Talk live podcast, as I'm branding it. Got to keep the brand strong. But yeah, thanks for coming by, everybody, for the live stream. We appreciate y'all. What we got on here tonight? Right now, we have Rice, King. I think Jake's coming in and out. And we got some bots. So, well, thanks for tuning in again, bots. But yeah, we have some fun topics for you guys
Can't hit on
tonight.
them
So
bots.
we'll be
Can't
talking
hate on
about
them.
China a little bit, and then talking about bringing up some opportunities in the car industry, and then we'll be talking a little about market cycles. Figure out where we're at in the market cycle. But I'll go ahead and start with China. So, some crazy stuff's been happening in China lately. Um, you know, as right when we think it's over, it just gets more intense because China has moved on from company regulation to regulating their economy and people's actions and what they can do, which is pretty crazy. The CCP is going insane. But we're just going to cover some of the news and then kind of figure out why they might be doing it. So, one of the big things I want to bring up, because Nate a while ago talked about in the Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, join that. If you listen on YouTube, join that Discord. But Nate was talking about Didi a while ago, and Didi jumped this week on reports of the Chinese government taking it over, which is crazy. Um, and I made a video on my YouTube channel a little while ago, Chill Deal Trades,
Mm-hmm.
and it was back in the day. There was another company that went public in the U.S. and it's a very similar thing happened where China was like, we're going to regulate it, and then when their price went down, some private company that probably some support from the Chinese government bought like a majority stake in the company, like bought like 60% of the company. And it seems like the CCP is trying to do some maybe similar action with Didi, trying
Yeah.
to be a little you're not gonna listen to us, so we're gonna make it so that we can buy your company because the valuation went so low. So that this is pretty crazy news on stuff on Didi. How you feel about that, Nate? I know that you're talking about it a while ago as a potential investment opportunity.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at it. In fact, I think I bought some, if I'm not mistaken. I bought a couple long calls on them. It's in my price range. As you all know, I like to go under 20 bucks. Those are my stocks that I like to seek out. And so when this hit, I mean, we got the chart right up here next to it. So we got the 1 day. We'll go 3 months really quick to give some context here, and then we'll break down what the government is doing, which may help or may not, depending on the outlook here. Because there's a bunch of other craziness that's happening this week that you gotta
Yeah,
hear. You gotta hear. Dill's gonna hit this, and it's wicked. So
insane.
the stock, look at this, July 21st from 15, it's dropping down below 10 now, and that's only 3 months ago. But I'm a huge fan of these folks. DD is the ride sharing equivalent of Uber, Lyft over in China, a dominant market. I don't know how many people are there in China now. I don't know, but it's going to be
Half the
insanely
world.
growth. Yeah, the growth is going to far exceed, I think, anything that we've seen here in the U.S. and in particular, like I said, in China. But government might take some ownership here that you're going to talk about here in a second. And we've seen something similar with like Thai Airways. That's OTC. It's a penny
Mm-hmm.
stock at this point, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity there as well. We talked about it with Hertz, a couple other stocks as well, where you know, value stocks. I mean, these are mega value stocks, and I think DD's one of them. So I'll pause there. You got some tremendous news coming out right now, so I'm gonna let you take this.
Yeah, but Didi is just one of the many crazy. Now we're gonna jump into the just. I mean, I want to say it's comical, but it's just too crazy to even call it comical.
Crazy.
But China came out this week and basically said like we're putting restrictions on children under I think the age of 18 of how many hours a game they can play in video games, which is insane. So it says right here, children in China are limited to 3 hours per week of online gaming. Crazy. And it said there's nearly 600 or 700 million online gamers in China. So I think this is a couple interesting implications. So I can't remember what drug it was. Do you remember, Nate? They had a really big drug problem in China for a long time.
Opiate, yeah.
Opioids,
Yeah.
and so basically what the CCP said is we view gaming as the new opioids, and so we're put regulation in place to stop kids from or anybody under the 18 from over consuming video games because that's how we view it. We view it as a new drug, and we don't want our kids to be addicted to it going into their adult years. So whether they're having positive and negative income, who knows? But this is insane for that a government can go in and just tell people what they can and can't do. I mean, it's just purely insane to me. Whether it's gonna play out positively or not, I mean, who knows? But it's just insane that oh, here we go. Yeah, China battling against the spiritual opium. So the addiction to video
Yeah.
games, they're making the parallel to addiction to opioids in the past in their country that they dealt with for a really long time. So I don't know. It's pretty insane. What do you think about this, Nate? I think it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it's hella crazy, man. I think part of it also is due to the fact that I'm not gonna steal your thunder because I think you're gonna talk about this, but how they are also looking at banning certain things on their internet and streaming. Specifically, I think the one child policy led to some of this stuff because they want to make sure that folks
Mm-hmm.
are procreating, they're not stuck behind the screen. They're going to suffer
Yeah.
if they don't start promulgating or creating offspring, specifically A, for their
Mm-hmm.
workforce, but B, if they're into video games, I mean, where's the workforce going to be when they need to sustain their economy
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day? So, multiple things happening simultaneously. This is one of many things that we're definitely talking about here tonight. And just the implications that, man, it's like so crazy. And I don't know, man. It's, yeah, I got so much to talk about this, but I'm going to stop. It's crazy.
But I mean, I think like an interesting point on like when it comes to company, I'm really curious how this is going to impact companies like Tencent. Yeah, it's like
Right.
I think they're like one of the biggest gaming companies in the world, but also the biggest in Asia. And so I'm really
Mm-hmm.
curious how this is going to impact these companies on an evaluation perspective. Obviously, there's already been a lot of scrutiny. Like, is the government taking a majority or either majority or minority stake in DD? Is that good or bad for the company? And then when it comes to like regulating how much kids can play video games, is that a
Mm.
good or negative? Like what impact is it going to have on these companies? I think that's like the biggest question I think that we have. Next week, we're going to dive into a little bit more on the stock side of things in China and kind of like our perspectives on if we should invest or not. But this week, I just wanted to cover some crazy news that's coming out. And I would say this leads us, I personally think, the craziest of crazy news, which is absolutely insane. Oh, wait, do I have the article up? Oh, I didn't open it up yet. Let me find it real quick. Because I do have it here. Oh, here we
Population.
go. I found it. This is absolutely bonkers to me. Let me make sure I have everything, all my articles for later.
Yeah. And so I think
Later.
part of
But
this is leading up to what they call we call
yeah,
like incel or involuntary celibacy. Like
yeah,
people don't want
yeah,
to procreate or they have a desire to, but they can't. So I think this is the epitome of it, quite frankly. Um,
yeah. Specifically, but the whole concept of like K-pop. and K-pop men, and they kind of have this more feminine look, softer features, and obviously a lot of makeup and things like that. And so basically China's like, you can't show men that don't have a masculine presence or a masculine look. You can't show them on TV, which is, I would say, I mean, all the news we shared is crazy so far. I would say this is the wildest from a Western perspective, because as Nate said, this could never ever happen in the United States. Break down more of like the company side of things. This is a little bit more macro perspective on China, but they're just making all these decisions to not, I guess, control, or I think it's less about control. I guess it is control, but navigate China in the direction that they see it being most successful in the long term. And so they believe that, the image that men see on TV is impacting how they're acting, and then playing too many video games is potentially impacting. I think it's specifically kind of centered towards men, I would say, in the decisions they're making, as that's the majority of people who play games and the images of men. But that kind of breaks down, Nate alluded to just a second ago, but when it really comes to, there's a couple things that are happening in China, right? So as Nate mentioned, the one-child policy was something that was a big part of China for years, and we know, I don't remember, they just recently, a couple of years ago, got rid of the one-child policy, right, Nate?
Yeah, they reinstituted.
Was
I
it
think they can
last
have
year?
two now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think part of it was because they realized there were some really horrific things that were happening to people who were having daughters instead of sons,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they want to carry the name, etc. So now you have this influx and hyper growth of males in China
Mm-hmm.
that are now being emasculated, or not living up to the standards of the Chinese rules, if you will, of being
Expectations of
manly. Yeah,
men. Yeah.
exactly, and ruling and being of masculine descent. So yeah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
But it kind of goes into like, okay, so why are they making decisions, right, from a macro perspective? So like this chart, I think, is a really great example of basically from the 60s, their population growth has went from like 2.5% to basically zero. So it's at under 0.5%. So their population's growing at like 0.3%. And so when we really think about everything that's going on in China, like China is a country that's grown massively over the last 20 years, 30, 40 years, and they've significantly caught up to US as an economic world power. The size of their GDP is catching up to the US. And so I think from like a macro perspective, the CCP is like, we have to make decisions that are going to continue to grow our population so they can grow the GDP. And we're seeing the same thing on the policy side for companies like Didi. Like when it really comes to Didi, is basically a monopoly in the ride sharing. There's other companies, but Didi is really the big player, and so they're trying to make decisions that gives other companies a chance besides Didi. And so we see this, all these little, first it started at company regulation, now it's becoming personal liberties as people in China. And so it's really all comes down to one of the perspectives of China's not really growing anymore, and for their GDP to continue to grow and their economy to continue to grow, their population has to grow. And so what we see is it's not growing anymore. And the second thing is, kind of Nate mentioned it, is marriage rates. So when we look at China and marriage rates, it's basically back in about 2010, it peaked around 9-10%, and now it's headed significantly lower down to about 6%. And so I think China is really making all these decisions because they realize, like, okay, from the CCP's perspective, like, we don't like how our economy is moving. We're going to make decisions to force it in the direction that we want. And so, in my mind, when we go back to a investing perspective, like, I'm curious what you think, Nate, and everybody in the chat, in the stream. Do you think this is a negative or a positive for China? Do you think that this is going to, is their forced hand going to actually help China grow in the direction they want, or do you think it's going to hinder their growth? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I'll give it to the chat. I see Tan Man's down here as well. But Jake just typed something in. China has been messed up for years, and it's crazy to me that some people want communism for our country. And yeah, not to get too politicized here, but yeah, communism or socialism or any ism, more people will dislike them. I think also people in China are going to want to flee China, right? I mean, now,
Uh,
there's a podcast that was talking about this. This is the perfect opportunity for them to try to overthrow the government because now, with all of these things compounding on people's personal freedom and rights, quote unquote, rights, like now would be the time. When's the tipping point to push people over the edge to say, you know what, enough is enough? Like video
yeah.
games, I mean, it's the new thing. Like I could see
Mm-hmm.
people saying that's my right to play games, right? As much as it would be, and not to bring up anything, I'm not even going to say it because it's not fair to reference that. But what's happening in Texas right now, and so like people's rights need to be established, and government. I'm very much a libertarian. Like I believe in
Do a
rights, but
people swap.
we do people swap. I'll take one of those for what two of those people. Yeah, what do you, kind of like the house swap, like wife or what's it?
Yeah, wife swap.
Wife swap.
Yeah,
Like
wife
I feel
swap.
like
The ABC show from years ago.
yeah, but it's
One for
crazy.
one.
It's crazy, man. Like I'm curious to see where this goes, let alone the market, right? And we've been talking a little bit about like the ADRs and some of the American
Yeah.
receipts and
Well, I
some
mean,
other things. How does that play in, right? And
yeah.
perfect timing.
Yeah, I mean, so from my personal perspective, like I think what China is doing is going to create more turmoil for stocks, Chinese stocks in the short term. We didn't really talk about, we talked more the social side of things, but we did mention DD a little bit. But really, what China's doing is they're forcing policy on companies to try to stop monopolies from controlling the marketplace. So, like Jake, like you said, Alibaba, like Alibaba essentially became a monopoly in Asia. Like they grew because of certain, um, there weren't a lot of regulations to stop them from just monopolizing the market, whether it was acquiring companies or forcing businesses to only put their products on their platform. So really, what China's doing is they're realizing like our growth rate is slowing from every perspective. Our GDP is growing at a slower rate. Our population is basically not growing anymore at all. We're under a 0.5% growth every year. People aren't getting married. And so, from every perspective, I think China is trying to figure out how do we grow the economy holistically. And the thing is because the CCP can do what they want, you know, because they're communist party and there's not really the government situation or I guess balance that we have like in the US. They can do things instantly, and so they're like, okay, we need to stop monopolies. We're going to make these companies get fined for this, or they can't IPO, or um, they have to let people show or sell their products on all e-commerce platforms. Um, and then from the social side, they're like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that because we believe that in the long term, it's going to benefit our economy. So, from my perspective, I think the short term is going to have a lot of turmoil, but I still think in the long term, China is a good investment. I'm personally not investing in Chinese stocks in the moment, but there is a time when I will start buying Chinese stocks because they have sold off quite a bit because of the turmoil. But I do think there's going to be more. And the article on the screen, China is going to create their own stock exchange in Beijing. And this, I think, just points to the same thing I'm saying right now is like China's making moves to not only bring more money internal, like creating a stock exchange. That's so people don't buy ADRs anymore. That's what they're trying to do. They're
Yeah.
trying to bring that money directly into the Chinese marketplace and economy. And so in the short term, it's going to, I think, really hurt the Chinese economy and grow and from a financial perspective. But I think in the long term, once all the kinks are figured out, I think honestly, in my opinion, I think China's going to continue their growth and figure things out eventually. But I don't know. It's super crazy right now. I wonder, what do you think, Nate? Do you think that you, what the CCP forcing their hand, you know, it's in the short term it's going to cause turmoil, but in the long term figure, or do you think it's just going to mess up their economy forever?
We'll find out. I can't really guesstimate on this one right now. There's too many factors at play.
Yeah.
I'm looking also at their real estate, and I think they just started filling up one of their ghost towns with people. Because China's known for building,
Mm,
and we
yeah.
haven't really talked about this ever, but it just recently came to light that one of these ghost towns that they built for nobody, right? The mindset is build it, they will come. Well, nobody went to start
Nobody
occupying these
went.
spaces, but now people are starting to buy up certain areas of China, and China's known for real estate and money and backing these big developments, and so I think that money now being put into play, they're seeing some maybe returns on investments and looking where else can they put the money. So maybe the government knows something we don't. I don't know how this will affect the American stock exchange and some of the investments that we have. We being Americans in investment funds and so forth are going to play this, but I don't know. Maybe we'll be like the Canadian guy that came in the other night and paid $15 per trade to to trade
True.
something overseas. Like maybe that's that part of their game plan is specifically if Biden is looking to start charging some taxes, import taxes based on, exporting steel to us, right? Would this offset some of their costs by virtue of, like, there's so many factors that we'd have to consider
Yeah.
that, but they know something we don't know, and we'll find out what happens
Yeah.
in the near future. So,
I agree. And I think that's where we'll leave the conversation on China. But Jake, like I mentioned, next week, I think jumping into more of the regulatory side on Chinese companies and where that creates opportunity and maybe where we should hold off. We'll dive into a little bit more of that next week because I think what's happening in China is really crazy, but it could create some investment opportunity. So
hmm,
we'll talk more on that side of things next week. But
I agree.
go on to
I
the next
agree.
topic. Nate, you want to go to your topic or around
Yeah, I'm bullish.
cars?
Yeah, and I'm pretty bullish on travel, but something that caught my attention recently. Going to ditch TD Ameritrade for Beijing. Dang, King. All right, buddy. Let me know how that goes. So I don't know if y'all saw this. So in 2020, mid 2020, GM came out with this thing called the Ultium battery, and until recently, it's been pretty quiet. So I started looking into it a little bit this week and realized that this might be a pretty profound opportunity for GM. And I'm going to kind of reverse the script here a little bit because GM is obviously a car company, manufacturer, etc. But through that lens, they're also kind of on the technical side, technology focus as well. So they're creating this pretty phenomenal technology around battery cells. In particular, contains 20 times more than Tesla's small cells that they currently have, and then they can reduce the cost dramatically. I think they have it here at the top. Maybe it's the other article. Which one do you have up? Sorry. Oh no, it's getting pixelated. But they were talking about reducing the costs up to like 70% and all the way
Crazy.
up to 90% based on the materials that they're using. And it's, the cobalt by not having to use that and replacing it with some other things, but also the long lasting charges that they can potentially have with this and the lifeline of life term of how long these batteries can last. So beyond 100,000 miles, they're looking at 250,000 miles.
Oh,
And then the other
like
part
an engine.
was, yeah, and the other part that they had, which was pretty insanely cool, is the fact that the way that they package these. You can kind of see here in this diagram. I was hoping to see a better version of it. There's a video I could pop up, but for the Hummer in particular, they have a 24 set module. So all of these packs contain, or these pouches as they call them, contain really like slices. Think of like bread going into a toaster type thing, as opposed to these cells that like Tesla or the big battery packs. So they can actually put these or accommodate whatever type of vehicle. They can go vertical, they can go horizontal. It's not just one fat battery, right? Or multiple batteries. It's these really small cells that are compact and tied, intertwined with each other. And so, very fascinating article. I'll actually put it in the chat here. Yeah, it's getting a little pixelated, I know, Jake, which is ridiculous. We paid to upgrade this, and then again, you're not it. You're kind of running around right now, so it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, so the company says its purchasing cost is 90% lower, right? And
That's
so,
crazy.
not to mention they're launching 30 new EVs by 2025. We talked about this weeks ago. Okay, just a little Minecraft face. Come 2035, its
Hmm.
only vehicles with tailpipes will be heavy-duty trucks, and that's obviously because they can't get the torque that they need through the batteries quite yet. So, but yeah, the pouch type. I mean, it's a fucking insane opportunity. I think so. Taking this originally, they did work with LG. They were the manufacturers of the battery cells and so forth. I think they're going to veer away from that because they have their own opportunities to start investing in the battery tech. And I'm going to pop up this video off of their website because it kind of shows a little bit of what it entails. This one here. So these are the pouches. It's going to be a little hard to see, I think, but so they slide into like they create a set, and then those sets go into these blocks
Crazy.
that they can manipulate in any manner they want. They can put it under the chassis, they can put it on the side, kind of in the trunk, in the front of the vehicle, like, and it can be manipulated to make it. Thanks, Jake. To make
I mean,
it
it's perfect for a bed of a truck.
exactly and weight, right? If you need more weight on the front or the back,
Hmm.
and then the wiring system that they have also is going to be dropped like 80% of that waste is going to go away because they can actually track the battery technology of if they're overcharging or having technical problems with it. They're going to a Wi-Fi model, so they can actually track and diagnose the batteries through a Wi-Fi system as opposed to kind of this analog digital um, technology that we use today. But they're moving on beyond that. So I bring that up because as I'm looking at GM, I'm not actually looking at them as a car. They make vehicles, right? But they also are tech focused. And I'm just going to pull this up because this is insane as well. All the patents that they have that they're currently doing within the last year, apart from this battery technology, I mean, they have multiple things going on. So 2020, March 2020. Like, I'm not going to go through this full list, but they invented the Cadillac converter as well. Like, all of these other
Hmm.
techs that nobody thought about or think about them, they have done all of this stuff for 100 years plus. And so just thinking about that as not a car manufacturer or a consumer of this good, but rather a technology company, I think gives a better description of why I'm looking at them. So we can go back from the lacquer paint system all the way to the room air conditioner, right? And how these are being adopted throughout. I mean, look, like medicine, computer operating system, give or take, but like PCV valve, the Electrovare that they had back in the day. They created one of the first EV vehicles back in the day as well, unleaded gasoline. But one of the big things was this Cadillac converter, um, catalytic converter rather. But R&D, like that's the big play for them, I think, long-term thinking strategically from a year, 2 years, apart from all the vehicles and stuff. But then the other part is people are going to need to adopt these technologies, meaning buy the cars. We need either an infusion of cash from the government or from private entities with rebates and so forth, kind of like Tesla did for the first few years for folks to really pick it up. And then we're going to need obviously all the charging stations, which why I'm also bullish on ChargePoint and a couple others as well. But just like going through all the technology they've created in the last 100 years, but even like the last 5 years. I mean, the Bolt, they got the Super Cruise, they got for trucks,
Yeah.
like insane. So I started looking at this. I'm like, they're not a like you think GM is a car company. They're actually a tech company too. And it totally flipped the script on how I'm looking at investing in them now. Because once they patent and this cell becomes mainstream, they're competing with Tesla. Tesla just called their battery technology crap because of all the fires that are happening with their latest and greatest EV vehicle, but or EV, I guess if you use a vehicle, but their latest AV. But that's because the technologies don't allow for it to get to this point quite yet. Meaning, the batteries are only supposed to be charged up to 90% anyway because of technology constraints. And then there's a couple other confinements, you could say, to that technology that doesn't allow this not this battery, but the current batteries that we're using. So if they can modernize and build on this battery, the pouch that they have, that we have up here on the main screen, I think that could be a phenomenal technology that would get adopted by other companies as well, right? License it out, whatever they do, I think they're going to have a heyday. And so that's what I'm looking at with GM right now. And then I wanted to compare it to like Ford. I like Ford. I think they have a different consumer, if you will, specifically for their Ford trucks and the Mach-E and the Mustang. But look at theirs. I mean, 2012 was the last time they got like a real, or 2013, I guess, like a real patent. 2013, 2007, like, so they're a little behind, but they have a lot of patents that are still on their books. So they had a lot of early inventions, but have kind of lagged on moving forward, where GM's kind of picking up the pace when it comes to that. So I just thought this was, I heard of the battery, didn't really pay attention to it. Then I started doing some digging and was like, holy crap, like there might be something really good here that we're overlooking because we're so focused on vehicles. We're not actually focused on the technology backing or being the bedrock of these vehicles. But what are your thoughts? Because, I mean, are you going to buy an EV, by the way? Anytime?
At some point, yeah.
Yeah.
I think at least a hybrid as the next vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
at the minimum. But yeah, I think kind of what you said. I think what people sometimes forget is that Tesla's an amazing, innovative company that really has pushed GM and Ford to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is like everyone who says, no one's going to catch Tesla, GM and Ford have years and years of manufacturing infrastructure. And
Mm-hmm.
Tesla's a company that's just figuring out their infrastructure. So what
Yeah.
took Tesla 10, 15 years to do can take like a GM or Ford 4 or 5 years to do because they have the infrastructure to innovate and evolve quickly.
Right.
Yeah, they are the car experts. Exactly. Like they've been around for years and years and years. And so the amount of turmoil or struggle that I would say maybe like a GM would have compared to a Tesla in that innovation is going to be much less because of the infrastructure. So yeah, and I like the Chevy. I think it was the Bolt or the Volt. Like that's an amazing car when you actually look at the specs of what they're doing with it. Like it actually gets like a ton of miles for that little car, and so I think
Right.
that kind of like what Nate was mentioning. Something that I look at when it comes to Ford and GM is with them is like I think they're different investments because when we think of Ford, it's like they're going all in really on their electric truck. Like that's what they're going after because that's what Ford is known for, and that's why they stopped manufacturing their sedans. Is because they know they're a truck company. They know that's what they're known for, and now they're creating this new line of electric trucks at pretty good prices. And that brings up another great point when you're a huge car company, like King said, for years and years of you can manufacture these electronic cars at a much lower cost than Tesla can. The reason the Tesla $20,000 sedan keeps getting pushed back is because Tesla has to figure out how to manufacture at that cost, where Ford and GM have been manufacturing cars at that cost for years and years and years. And that's why that new Ford, what was it, 20K for the new Ford electric
Yeah.
truck?
Yeah.
25K. That's the reason they can
The
produce that
short
so
bed.
cheap is
Yeah.
because they have the manufacturing to do it. And so, yeah, I agree with Nate. Like, I'm super bullish long term. I think where me and Nate disagree is short term. I'm still more bearish because of all the issues happening with chips. In my opinion, with material costs going up,
Yeah.
as well as shortage with chips, all cars use chips now, not just electric vehicles. I think that's going to have serious negative impact on the growth of revenue for these companies over at least the next year and a half. And so I think some of that's getting priced in right now. Personally, I'm still waiting to make the investment personally. But
So
long
do you
term,
think
I'm
we've hit
bullish.
the new
Short
low?
term,
Have we hit
I'm
the low of
bearish.
low? Or do you think it's going to drop even
I
more?
don't know, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. Yeah, I've been trying to analyze the stocks, and my kind of buy range was around where at least Ford pulled back to, which was around
Mm-hmm.
that $12 mark. But
Yeah.
with all the new news about cutting production, we don't see the chip shortage going away anytime soon. That's gotten me a little more worried, because what happened with Ford is people priced in the growth in revenue last year when these car companies exploded. And that's why their price went up, 300% in a year, because you saw this crazy growth. But now people are having to price in a large decrease in revenue expectations. Um, and so that's why I'm a little more bearish personally in the short term, um, where we're at today. But long term, I think that Ford and GM in the long term are undervalued with what they're going to be able to do with electric vehicles.
Yeah, that's fair. And as Jake said, Ford is and Ford GM, they're all shutting down their plants for like a week or two
Mm-hmm.
until they can figure out the chips problem that they have. But I think it's going to ramp up. They are going to an on-demand order system as well.
Mm-hmm.
Ford is,
Which is
and
smart.
yeah, and I actually wouldn't. I mean, I could see that happening with all these car companies because then you actually get to create the the demand, if you will. You control the market as opposed to the consumer, and then you have all this excess inventory. Like, what do you do with all that wasted metal? All right, you try to recycle it, but the cars just sit on the lot, and they
And
really can't
and
afford that. Yeah,
and like you said, like sitting a lot, like why is Ford and GM not adopting um, the Tesla business model? Why don't they just start with all the shortage? Why don't they just start having people create custom cars online and sending those cars directly to people? Like
yeah,
how many costs can you how many costs can you remove from your supply chain by doing that? Like, you're having shortage issues, just cut out the middleman, which is the dealership. Like, I think people somewhat know what car they want already. I don't know how much, especially when there's a shortage, how much they're going to be test driving. People are just choosing whatever car is available.
mm-hmm.
And so why not just cut out some of your costs? That's going to help your bottom line. It's going to make your quarterly revenue look better for the short term. I,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think they should change up their business model a little bit for the short term.
yeah, and yeah.
But
The
I'm bullish on
average.
both.
Yeah, and the average cost I think of the vehicle is close to 40 grand, which is the highest. I think it was quoted 41,000 for a
That's
brand new
crazy.
car, which is the highest it's ever been. And part of that's because of the chips. Part of like there's just so much though, like
Chips,
externalities that you can't.
metal,
Yeah, the
everything's going up.
freight, like the lack of
Right?
supply,
Yeah.
the COVID, like people are working from home, so like I don't know. We're just in a weird moment right now from every aspect of it. But I did want to pull up GM here. We do have institutional buying. We always talk about this stuff. It's very important. Insider trading, same thing. There's a lot of things happening here. Um, but nothing for me that's like, oh crap. I'm actually looking at this like,
Yeah.
man,
No.
there's some good opportunities.
Massive
Like they're
red
selling
flags.
off, but I mean, if you look where they sold off, it was average share price at 62. So it wasn't like, oh shit, like we're gonna hit rock bottom. They sold probably because
Took profit.
bit
Yeah. Get some
cyclical.
money.
Yeah, like yeah, you're like, man, I'm gonna cash out on this, but that doesn't spook me at all. In fact, it actually makes me want to buy it a little more because if you look at the 50-day range as well, I mean, it's at almost its lowest, which I think strikes an opportunity. If it gets below 48 and we just see it drop, precipitously, then I might have some worries. But I don't know where support's going to be. We could definitely talk about that and debate that. I'd love to in Discord if you guys have thoughts about this. But I mean, I'm dollar cost averaging down on these folks right now through call options. However, where there's an opportunity, we could talk about a different day. I rolled those options over, made some good money on that this last week, but thousands more than I bought it at. Yeah, but
Bought at the right time.
thousands more worth. Yeah. So I mean, for me, GM's I like that play. I
Yeah.
like Ford. You know, looking out 3 to 6 months. I'm playing a bunch of short calls and long calls right now on them. I'm not buying any puts. I'm not selling any puts or cover call. Like I'm strictly buying call options. That if it drops, I'm just gonna roll those over and put them in. So thousands more than I bought my truck. Yeah. But one thing that did come to light is actually cars, which is an ETF. So if it's actually pretty interesting ETF, and I say this because I was hoping I could click on a different link to see the portfolio here, but you can see the portfolio top 10 holdings, right? Tesla, Toyota, General Motors, and a bunch of people who are making the car world go round and round. At this point, they've been pretty flat, like a bit volatile, but overall, if you go like 5 years, Dill,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It looks like it's been going sideways for the last
do a
couple
5 year
months.
chart really quick, please. I think you have it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see it dropped. I wish I would have known this and bought in at that time, obviously, in 2020, early 2020.
COVID.
Yeah. That plus airlines. Oh, that would have been so nice. But I did buy the airlines, jets, but I did not buy cars. But I think by virtue of the portfolio that they have, I mean, you look at Tesla, they're heavily weighted because of their market cap. But Toyota, General Motors, all these other folks, Ford's in there, they have a hodgepodge of these. I think I'm following this just as much as I am following individual stocks because I think there's a telltale sign here. Once chips start picking back up and people start getting their business model more tuned, fine tuned, and I think you're right too. Online ordering, I think, is the future. It's quick. They can deliver it to your house. Right now, a customized order for a car is about 6 months because of the backlog of chips and some other things. So what they're trying to do
Crazy.
is clear the lots off so they have space, which is also another pretty interesting thing when you think about real estate is they have massive parking lots. What are they going to do with all that land? And so
Mhm.
very curious to see how that ends up playing out, which I haven't even given it that much thought. But just talking off the cuff, it's like, I mean, how many acres of land do they have, right? Of parking lot for cars. And so I think there's many things, much more to come from this. But this was one of them that I was looking at cars pretty heavily. And then there's another one, VCarb, which is a different play. It's actually a disruption in tech ETF. I thought about you a little bit on this one, King, just thinking about the unorthodox approach you have to stocks. A thematic product is not, rather. But this is pretty interesting because they concentrate on a few disruptive companies to dominate autonomous driving and then enhance concentrated exposure with options. So it's a very convoluted, a bit intricate, but I kind of like the play here a little bit. It's different, fairly cheap, kind of in my book of things. Then you scroll down to, let's see, some of their holdings, premium discounts. So they have Tesla, they have Vail. We've talked about Vail for a long
Oh,
time,
interesting.
since I can remember. Yeah,
For the
semiconductors.
materials.
Exactly. ADRs. I mean, they got a
Oh,
hodgepodge.
TSM.
Nvidia.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
For the
Amazon's in
chips.
here. Yeah, AMD. So it's like
Interesting.
a very interesting play. I mean, there's a lot of Nasdaq stocks here, obviously, but and S&P for that matter. But yeah, Disney. Like, so they're looking for disruptive
Interesting.
stocks that might have a future outlook in tech and um, in autonomous vehicles. So what's that next wave look like, right? Uber, Lyft, they obviously sold off their portfolios. They were both trying this technology, and quite frankly, that was a big mistake. They wasted a shit ton of money and didn't get anywhere with it, and had to sell it off because it's costly, it's time consuming,
Very.
and if that's not in your wheelhouse, outsource
Let
it and
someone
then
else do
adopt
it.
it. Yeah, like why would you even think about doing that? I'm surprised the boards even allow them to, but whatever. Um, but it's pretty interesting.
Trying to make.
Just yeah, just in
Replace,
general, like
simplify.
what they're looking at. I'm not gonna go through the whole video, but I'll pop that one into the chat here as well in case anybody's interested. But not gonna lie, uh, as soon as I saw it, King, I was like, oh, this is a King player. I want to hear King's thoughts on this because I think it's pretty interesting. I don't know. Any thoughts on that off the cuff?
I have to look at the ETF more personally. I wanted you guys think in the chat. there's some random companies in there, so I'm really interested, like Netflix and stuff. I'm trying to, I guess it's car, robot, and tech, so it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
all encompassing. But it definitely, I mean, a lot of these names long term Disney. That's funny.
Here's all the options
But
right here. Look, they got Tesla September 2021 $1,300 call option.
there's some puts too. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like so. You know, I would almost compare this, and I think this. I
Oh, they
don't
got a
know
put
much,
on the hedge on the SM or the QQQ. That's interesting.
right? So it's kind of like I'm curious to see how they end up doing by the end of the year versus Kathy Wood. You know what I mean? Like
We
I
should
think
have
this is
that
like V car versus Arc. Like that would be
right. Yeah,
pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how those two would do side to
that's
side.
hilarious.
But yeah, just from a cost point strategy, I mean, I haven't done any charting on this or really done an in dive. Haven't had time to really look into it, but I'm just curious to see what people think. If you're interested, please let me know. I mean, their volume trades 74. They're not, huge. They started actually inception dates December 28th, 2020.
Yeah, recently.
So, I think part of the play is like if Kathy Wood can do it, I can do it kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm curious to see how this
Yeah, it's
plays out.
interesting.
But nonetheless, I'm still bullish on travel, on everything. There's going to be dips, obviously COVID and everything, but I think that actually provides an opportunity. Let's see if the government bails out like we did with Ford. I mean, GM was owned by the government. They were the majority owner at one point because of the bailouts. I could see maybe that happening with the airlines. I could see that, like we've talked about this before, but if it gets bad, they're too big to fail, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day. So I'm comfortable buying them. The question then becomes at what price point, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, man. We will see what happens. Any last thoughts on vehicles and travel, if you dare?
I mean, travel for me, I think so. My tone has always been, I think we still have another 2 years of new, maybe a year and a half more of new COVID variations.
Yeah,
And with the mutations that are happening, you know, there's some new variants in South Africa, and now it's made its way into Europe that are showing resistance to vaccines.
mm-hmm.
So vaccines aren't even protecting against them. So if those things kind of like Delta variant make their way across the globe, I think that's going to have more negative impact on transportation stocks. So I
Right.
think that makes me more bearish still on transportation. I think people, if that happens, or the fear side of people are going to continue to cancel their trips.
Right.
Um, of all the airlines, I'm most bullish on Southwest because it's mostly domestic travel, which I don't think will have as big of an impact. But any companies that rely heavily on international travel, I'm very bearish on. So things more like Delta. Delta's a big one for international travel.
Yeah.
I think American Airlines does a bit of an international as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more bearish on those. If there's a stock that I feel a little less bearish on, it'd be Southwest because people are still going to travel domestically in the U.S.
Yeah.
Probably less, but that's going to be, I think, the safest of all bets in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, here's the travel for everybody. You only have 11 jets. Yeah. It's I'm very fond of jets, man. I bought it when it tanked. Um, back. It's over a year now. That's crazy. Yeah, I think I bought it like 15 bucks. So I'm gonna wait for it to drop. Probably I'm shooting for under 20, but I think that opportunity might be coming soon. So I'm keeping a close eye on it. Curious to see what happens. But from a travel standpoint, people are still traveling, dude. Like as of yesterday, and this is obviously Labor Day weekend.
Yeah,
But
Labor
these
Day is
numbers
kind of
aren't
old.
that far off from a couple years ago. Like you look at 2019
Mm-hmm.
versus 2021, like not bad considering. And I'm not saying that I'm traveling or taking airlines by any means, but I mean, this is TSA. That's not counting people who are driving. Like, you know, who knows how many other people are driving, but just comparing notes, if you will, from last year, I mean, day over day, you know, they're off about 600,000 pretty consistently, but they're getting there. And part of that, I think, is because
Definitely.
airlines, yeah, well, there's a lot of cancellations and stuff too. So I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
flights or how many people are losing because of that, but pretty crazy stuff. I like looking at this
Interesting.
sporadically to kind of see what's up. But yeah, but apart from that, it wasn't bad traveling mask up. Yeah, exactly. If only everybody else would. Problem is, I can't trust people. Like,
I think they make you on the planes. They
yeah,
make you wear masks.
yeah. But I mean, who's policing it if you know, at the end
I
of the
think
day?
I've been on a flight during COVID. People seem like if someone takes their mask off, the stewardess come up pretty quickly and be like, "Hey, put your mask back on."
Do you sneak alcohol on the planes?
Do I? Do I?
Do you
I have
sneak
not.
alcohol? They've had a lot of problems with who is it?
I have
Southwest?
not
Are
done
they
that.
stopping alcohol? No more
Probably
ordering
Southwest
alcohol
if
on the plane.
anybody.
Yeah, like man, but yeah, the ultimate time is currency. Elon Musk is on post that the other day. But yeah, I didn't know if there's anything, any other crazy news people got. I'm curious. It's
Yeah,
pretty
we'll
crazy
we'll we'll
times.
we'll hold the next topic I was going to cover for next week, um, about market cycles. That's going to be a fun one to cover with everybody. But yeah, we can definitely dive into some stock. Any stocks you guys are checking out in the chat? Any you've been on your radar, Nate?
Uh, yes. I've been pretty active on a couple. There's a REIT that I got to pull it up because I forgot what the ticker is off the top of my head. There's a REIT that I've been buying into. Actually, it's kind of I wouldn't say day trade, but let me find it. It's definitely swing trade. So it's Brookfield. Is it the Brookfield one? I think I'm mixing this one up. Sorry, folks. Let's see. BIPC is one of them. No,
What
it's
is
not
that called?
Brookfield. No, it's not Brookfield. That's infrastructure.
Oh,
I'm building a portfolio around Biden's infrastructure bill, and I can't remember half the freaking tickers that I'm buying into. DRE, I think, is what it is. I'm gonna click it right now. This is one Duke Realty
oh yeah, you talked about
core.
that last week.
Yeah, so that's one I'm hanging on to and trading kind of on an every other day basis with a call option on any given week. So how I'm playing that one, the next call option or option expires on the 17th. But the problem with that one is the spread is pretty heavy on that option play. I mean, it's pretty brutal,
A higher
to be honest.
price, less,
Well, it's
not as much
yeah,
volume trading.
yeah, that's a lot of it. So, but if you can get it while it's hot, meaning buy low, and while people are trading it up that day, sell it off in time, you could get away pretty quickly with a quick grab. And but the problem is you can't do like limits and so forth with options. You kind of have to be paying
Yeah,
attention at the time. But you can get
harder.
in at a pretty good price. Yeah, like right now the spread in the money at $50 is 60 cents. At $45, it's $4. And it just kind of increases from there. So you got to just pay attention to the market, play something for the day, and hope it works out. So I've been doing a little bit of that with that one, just because they do a lot of industrial and medical facilities is kind of their bread and butter for real estate purposes. But that's one that I've been playing a little bit. And then what's the other one? Bought up some DDs um, for December 16th, call options. And I'm trying to think if I'm doing any covered calls. I think I'm not at this point. Um, and my PLTR, actually, I played a call in it exercise because I didn't pay attention. I was going to close it and sell it, but it exercised, which is fine. I was in the money. So now I got to figure out if I'm going to sell it
You're
or
in the
hang on
money,
to it.
probably. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I was in the
they're
mind. I
moving
mean,
up a little
yeah,
bit.
exactly. So the question for me right now, kind of getting into my mind psychoanalysis here, is: do I hold on to it, play a cover call option on it, or do I just sell it and make a quick $100 or whatever on it? Because that's always my intent anyway, and then take 30% off the top, so $70. But yeah, that one I'd be curious actually, because if you're gonna do another video, kind of an update on that, I think it's kind of picking back up, if
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
not
do one this
mistaken.
week.
I'd be curious on that one, but the meme stocks and stuff though too. I know GM's getting
Man.
a little more involved and into the chats, the forums there in PLTR sometimes. So what's up, West Coast Kuma? Thanks for stopping by. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you guys have any stocks, let us know. Curious, always drop it up in Discord as well. Jake, I'm still waiting on your note that you found to know what if you're going to redeem
Oh yeah.
redeem that mine, the American miners note that you found. I'm waiting
So
on
one
that one.
interesting stock I'll bring up. I made a video on it. You should go watch that if you haven't yet. But this company, someone brought it up in a video on Root Insurance, the company I've covered
Oh
pretty
yeah, yeah, yeah,
actively. But it's called KPLT. So they're
yeah.
basically what Affirm does, but they do it for the more high, I guess, higher risk borrowers. So people who have
Mm,
like lower credit scores, such like that.
yeah.
Um, so this is a really interesting company. They were a SPAC, and then they got sold off heavily down to $3. I wish I heard about the stock when they were at $3,
Yeah.
but they sold off to $3. Um, and it's a really crazy opportunity because obviously the buy now pay later is becoming really big, in a way replacing credit cards to a big capacity,
Mm-hmm.
where people don't want to pay 30% interest on their credit card, so instead they're buying something for $200, and through the buy now pay later they're paying maybe $400 for a product. And
Apple's doing that,
for
right?
some yeah, for some people that's cheaper than credit cards based on when they can pay something off.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a really interesting company, mostly because a lot of SPACs that went public, their valuations are really high, but because the stock pulled back so significantly, um, their revenue is basically equals their market cap, which is really
Wow.
interesting. Um, so there's some risks, and I highlighted in the video, but this is a company I'm keeping my eye on. If it sells back down to that $3 to $5 range, I'm thinking of picking up a few shares. So this is a really interesting company because I think the buy now pay later is just beginning. I think it's been really got popularity over the last 2 3 years, but I think these kind of companies are going to explode. And this company is kind of in their own lane of what they do. They only do online and only for people who are, I think they call it like on risk on or something. I can't remember the term they use, but people who have like lower credit scores and such. So this is a really interesting company to keep an eye on. I would say it could be a really good long-term hold because their valuation is pretty low right now.
Yeah,
If their
that's
revenue stays up, they're at an 8 PE ratio right now, which is pretty crazy. So
what is it
they
at?
started making money this year. At 8 PE forward, an 8 forward-looking PE ratio, which is
Oh,
pretty
got it.
crazy.
Got it.
Jake
Yeah,
said
the
something in the chat. He says,
institutional could be out
"Oh
for
yeah,
five. Do all the research on it and put me in contact with the proper people. Oh, interesting. Could be out 45 or become rich.
Out 45 or a majority owner in
Yeah, I was gonna say, get us all to pitch in $10, and I will take 10% stake in the.
yeah. I'll pay the $45 for you, Jake. No problem. Just
Exactly, man.
cut some off the top for
Crowdfund this. We got you. I would just to see what comes of it, man. Like,
me. I'm
I'll
very
pitch in.
curious.
I'm actually serious. I'll pitch in, man. If that's your deal breaker. On the catapult, the volume, is this accurate? 133 million in the
Their
last day of
volume
trading.
exploded. Well, because a firm got to partner with a partnership with Amazon. Basically, this was
Okay.
like a sympathy play, and so it started getting volume, and then just people online went insane on it. Like StockTwit's volume went insane. All the chats online started picking it up, and people started buying the shit out of it. And that's why it went
Right.
from $3 to like $8 in a couple days, and now it's starting to pull
Wow.
back a little bit. So
Yeah, I might have to look into that. I
yeah,
kind of.
if it pulls back a lot, back to where it was before, this is definitely a stock I'll buy and probably add shares if it sells off more. It's a very interesting
Interesting.
company.
Yeah, 638. See United Rentals. Why are they? That's weird that they'd say that they're a competitor. That's
I
interesting.
don't know why they do that. But the only big red flag with the company is that most of their revenue comes through partnership with Wayfair, and Wayfair's had some, some scrutiny over the last couple of years and has slowed down. So that's the only big red flag. I think it's 70% of their revenue comes from Wayfair. So
Damn, they actually
that's a
like went up
con.
to $20. What the hell?
But I really think if this company sells back down to like $3 or something, I think this is a takeover play. Like I could see someone buying out this company and just
Yeah.
integrating their technology into their like Wayfair could buy this company and just own it, or
Huh.
some other big retail e-commerce company. So I think it's a really interesting play,
Yeah, that
long term play.
is.
Big
I think
risk, but
there's.
big reward potentially.
Absolutely. That's pretty crazy. Cray cray.
But that's one of the main stocks. I'm not looking at too many stocks right now personally. I'm looking at Vail. We talked about it quite a few times. We talked about it last week as well, but we talked about it last week as Vail. Um, but I don't know. I think I'm waiting for this to pull back a little bit more, only because it's up 100% in 1 year. And if we
Hmm.
even if we take pre-COVID, it's still up like 50%. And for $100 billion company to be up 50%, especially a materials company, is pretty crazy. And so iron ore, because of some regulation in China, has sold the prices come down drastically, which negative impacted the stock. But if this stock can stay above, what is it, above $16,
Hmm.
if it can stay above 15 to $16, then I think it's a good hold, a good buy. Um, and even if it goes sideways, you're getting an 8% dividend. So I think it's if it holds that range, it's a buy for me.
Nice.
But that's
Interesting.
the only those are a
Yeah, I
couple
think there's some
stocks
good
I'm looking at.
plays. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked about it again, but I'll keep bringing it up. Discovery, that's another stock I'm really keeping an eye on. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. Still waiting,
Hmm.
but I don't know when the merger date is with AT&T. But I think this is a HBO. Well, not with merger with AT&T, but with HBO. I think
Yeah.
HBO and Discovery are super overlooked as FU Seeking Alpha. Um, but I think they're super undervalued um, companies on how popular they are with consumers. Like HBO is an amazing platform, and for the people who love HDTV and Discovery type channels, like they're gonna pay that monthly fee to watch those shows, and so I think it's very undervalued. I mentioned it last week. The only really issue is the high amount of debt. So if something really bad happens in the economy, like they obviously have a lot of debt they have to deal with, but growth and the sheer amount of popularity for HBO Max and Discovery, whatever their platform's called, I can't remember. It's called
Right.
Discovery Plus. Um, Once these platforms integrate, like for sure a big winner, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
it's
this is a
interesting
stock that
because
I'm keeping a close eye on.
yeah, it's interesting because I think Netflix is realizing that they're losing out, and so they're trying to get into the video game
Mm-hmm.
world along with a couple other
Mm-hmm.
folks, and that's kind of like the new play. I'd be curious to see how that goes in the next 365 days, assuming that they get the AOK from SEC and everybody else that they need the AOK from. and move forward, the merge happens. It could be powerful. That'd be a big play. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Disney's killing it too with what they have going on, and that's not even
Mm-hmm.
including like the theme parks and everything else they have. But Disney's looking at
Well,
also integrating video games and other tech.
thing about Disney, what people don't realize is Disney owns hella shit.
Yeah,
Disney owns Hulu, they own ESPN, they have Disney Plus. So these are all the platforms that they own that they're making money from. It's just not Disney Plus. They own
right.
a ton of different,
Well,
streaming
it's
companies
yeah,
that are
they own
really popular.
everything. Yeah, they own. Is it Marvel? Like they own. Is it
Hmm.
Marvel? I can't remember who they
Marvel,
own.
yep,
Star
Marvel,
Wars. Like
Star Wars franchise.
they just incorporate that into their parks, and that's more revenue. I'm just like, what the beautiful business model. Bob Iger, who retired, was the CEO at the time. He's the one that put all this into play. So it's really
Yeah, he's a
hard.
genius.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be really hard to be the CEO to walk into that, similar to I was gonna say Steve Cook, Tim Cook, and Steve Jobs scenario. Steve Jobs passed away. Tim Cook took it over. He's on his 10th year anniversary, and they're like, "Oh, look at Tim Cook. He's a mastermind. He took it from where it was and brought it up." It's like I actually think it was Steve Jobs that created the opportunity that Tim Cook just took forward, and it's really
100%
hard to
agree.
screw that up. Like
Yeah.
there's already a platform. There's the revenue model is there. Like you can't screw it up. And I think the same would apply here with Disney. Like there's so much momentum going for it. Like you really have to do a bad deal to f it all up. But yeah, it's crazy though. They do own everything.
It's a little
I
expensive
think
for
they own a
me,
little bit of
but
Peru too. But I'm just kidding.
wouldn't doubt it. A couple islands.
But yeah, they're pretty spendy. I kind of balk. I don't even look at stocks that are over $100 to be honest. I'm like, no, out of my price range. Like they're in my
These are
they're definitely in my
401k
401k.
stocks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They'll stay in my
401k
401k.
stocks.
I'm not gonna grab them. That's funny. But yeah, I noticed also stock volumes. Retail traders are kind of shifting around as well. But I don't know if it's of interest to you guys. But Dill and I are. I've been investing in some real estate. I know Dill's looking at it.
Yeah.
We've been trying to figure out what the next play is, but there's some big things happening. Definitely in my life, I think in Dill's life around this. If you guys are interested, be curious to know if you guys are doing anything with real estate. And
Yep.
the more the economy's kind of shifting right now. The home values are starting to drop a little bit. People are wondering if there's a bubble coming through. Dill sent a pretty good video to me. I watched it today, just about the different scenarios. And we've talked a little bit about property taxes. We kind of do that. Yeah, you want to? Sounds good, Jake. I know you got some history too, Jake. Some good history, I think, between home ownership and some other opportunities. But in particular, yeah, property taxes, kind of what that does to opportunities. I meant to tell you actually, Dill, we were talking about this the other day, but like state of California, kind of how I look at real estate and investing, and I own a couple properties. At this point, it's the first thing I actually look at are the policies. I do look at the price. I look at some other things, but local and state politics, like California, the state of
100%
California, we have something called Prop 13, where it caps the property taxes every year
property
to no more than
taxes. Yeah.
2%. So it cannot exceed more than 2% year over year, your property taxes. So if you go from 100,000 to 500,000 in a year, you can only go up 2% tops maximum, which has mad implications for state and
Yeah.
county revenue. And we were talking about kind of in Texas, right, where you don't have sales tax. I can't remember which one it was, or in
State tax.
Austin. Yeah, state taxes, but so you have
State
to make
income
up for it
tax.
in for property
Yeah.
taxes.
3% property tax or whatever the hell they have. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like there's this like I failed to kind of bring that up in prior things, but I kind of like have a mental checklist I go through, and that's definitely one of them. Rent control, like is there some implications of rent control,
Uh,
or is the ball in my court or is it in my renter's court, in terms of being able to make the move? Like, can I evict them or am I going to get sued? because I'm trying to like there's all these other things that I would love to talk about with everybody here, get everybody's thoughts and feedback, and specifically looks like King, you are, Jake, definitely many others as we're looking at this. The market's kind of coming back down, that I think it'd be a pretty opportune time for us to maybe bring this topic up sporadically and talk about opportunities, because apart from REITs, there's all these other things that are possible, and different types of loans. I know you're looking at some loans, I'm looking at different loans, and how can you parlay those into bigger successes, as opposed to putting down all your money. Is there an opportunity to leverage funds? But market down is time for good buys. Yep.
Good next week too. What we should do next week, let's just set up now. I think we'll cover one stock market topic, and then we'll talk about housing market a little bit, kind of break down what we're seeing. And it's like Nate said, I think I would say specifically for the rental economy, I think it's, where rents are appreciating significantly right now. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see a very significant increase in rental prices. And it's only because so many like big financial institutions have bought up a lot of properties, and they can kind of manipulate the rents higher. And that creates a really good opportunity to buy rental properties. But I think next week we can dive into more of those nuances and kind of, states and areas that Nate and I are looking at and why we're looking at them. And we can definitely dive into that next week. And then maybe we'll start, an STG housing fund. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this chart really quick. California, we're at like $1,500 in rent, and we've hit the tipping point now where it's actually cheaper to rent than to buy, ironically. And I think you're in the opposite boat. Is that?
It's starting, yeah. So not Texas holistically, but Austin, because so many people have moved here and the housing market has moved so hot, rents are starting to catch up to mortgages in certain areas of the city. And so, rents are appreciating significantly here, which makes mortgages not look as daunting as it did before.
Right. That's crazy. The average is about $1,000. West Virginia, $725. If anybody wants to move out there. Hawaii, $1,600. Woo! It's cray, man. Cray. But definitely, I think this is a great topic. Diversifying your portfolio. I mean, my portfolio is all over the place. In a good light, in a good way. So, but definitely would like to hear what you all think. We could keep this as open as you guys would like, or as strict as you all would like. But I think this is a pretty cool topic. Bring some friends into it too. I think anybody who's interested. I have some real life experiences with this. In fact, I'm renovating. I got some pictures today from my contractor. I was like, good, he's working. So we're renovating a unit. And then my insurance emailed me, and they're like, we just did an inspection on the house and we noticed some things. I'm like, it's being renovated. Like, what do you want? So the random things of the housing life, and the property owner life. But it's fun. I really enjoy it. And if there's an opportunity, take it. So, but thank you all for hopping on with us. Greatly appreciate it. Stay active.
Appreciate you guys as always.
We definitely keep the information flowing in Discord. It's very, very much appreciated as we're moving forward. So, all right. You're gonna have some fun this week because we shall go. So thank you all for hanging out. Are you streaming tomorrow?
I don't think so. No, not this week.
So not tomorrow.
But I missed 2 weeks, so I feel bad. So I'm probably gonna do like a Monday or Tuesday night stream. So just because I feel bad to 2 weekends without. What do you pull the trigger on?
To buy the information for the note.
Oh,
So rock
nice.
rock a GoFundMe page or whatever you want, man. I'm saying I'll get 10%. I'll drop $10 and get 10% of that. No, fine. Keep us posted. Fingers crossed. I hope it's
Cross
awesome
check.
news, man. But yeah, thank y'all for hanging out. Thank you for Stock Talk Game. How we do it? Where we play
You